Hotep. Hey, this is Michael M. Hotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. It is Sunday, June 12th, 2022, and we are live. So I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecture writer, and historian. I wanted to come on just for a few minutes to talk about a 10-week online class that I teach on Sundays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968, and talk for a few minutes about how this ties into the January 6th insurrection and also the January 6th hearing that we saw on this past Thursday. Okay, and I'm teaching another installment in this 10-week online class today about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So as soon as I finish with this broadcast, I'll be teaching the class. You can join us in the class. You can register for it. We have the information here on the thread of the broadcast. I'll give you some more information dealing with it as well. So the January 6th insurrection continued the political violence that ended Reconstruction, reversing Black progress. And I'm going to reference two main articles here, and we're going to tie this into the January 6th insurrection as well. So actually three main articles. First, I want to look at this piece here from Washington Post, and I'll talk about this tonight on my radio show, the African History Network show, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sundays on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF. And we broadcast here on our Facebook and YouTube channels also, the African History Network on Facebook and Michael M. Hotep on YouTube. But if we look at this here briefly, 6 takeaways from the January 6th committee's first primetime hearing. So this is from June 9th, updated June 10th, 2022. Okay, so number one, the committee holds Trump responsible for the attack. Number two, how the committee plans to tell its story. They did a masterful job. There's a lot more coming, a lot more details coming. So each one of these, we'll talk about this on my show. Each hearing, we'll talk about this on my show. Number three, a sharp attack on Trump's Republican defenders. But number four, right here, how Trump influenced the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, 2 white supremacist organizations, domestic terrorists. How Trump influenced the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. Okay, and very quickly here, if we look at this, let me see how this shows up here. We can increase the size of this for you here also. Okay, so you should be able to read that. That's better. Okay, if the attack was not spontaneous, as the committee says it was not, what led to it? The committee alleges that right-wing extremist groups were motivated by Trump himself. Right-wing extremist groups were motivated by Trump himself. The committee spent a large chunk of Thursday's hearing introducing Americans to 2 of these, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and making the case for how Trump's statements and tweets influenced their actions and eventually their violence. This was political violence. Similar to what we saw during the Reconstruction Era, which is 1865 to 1877, which was the period after the Civil War ended. There were gains that African Americans were making, and you had white supremacists who were trying to stop those gains and take back control of state legislatures, and they used political violence to stop African American progress. And the political violence that we saw during the January 6th insurrection was largely a result of African Americans voting in January 5th in Georgia, and putting Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff into the U.S. Senate and defeating 2 Republicans, and then also African Americans voting for Joe Biden as well. So the committee presented evidence that membership of the Proud Boys tripled after Donald Trump praised the group in a presidential debate toward the end of the election. The hearing also featured footage of rioters reading aloud over a bullhorn a tweet Donald Trump sent attacking his then Vice President Mike Pence for his lack of courage. And when Trump tweeted ahead of January 6th, "Be there, will be wild, be there, will be wild," WILL, the committee said that the extremist groups took it as a call to arms. And then you had the documentarian Nick Quested, who did an excellent job with the documentary. He was embedded with the Proud Boys to document what was taking place January 6th. So he was there. He embedded with the Proud Boys that day, testified that some group members went to the Capitol early that morning. Others left the Stop the Steal rally on the ellipse to march to the Capitol before Trump's speech ever began. They did not seem very interested in hearing Trump speak, Nick Quested said, which Nick Quested said confused him at the time, but he described the group's atmosphere as much darker than usual. Okay, so here we see domestic terrorism. Here we see this political violence that was implemented to try to overthrow the government and stop a constitutionally mandated joint session of Congress to certify the presidential elections. Okay, it certify the presidential election results. Okay, now if we look, there's two articles from Time Magazine that I want to look at that draws a connection between the political violence that we saw January 6th and the Reconstruction Era, which comes right after the Civil War. So if we look at this first article here from time.com, Time Magazine, a new report finds that states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. This is Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. So this is in this 10-week online class that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. This is one of the periods of history that we look at, okay? And we have the information. Also, we have the information on our new website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Theafricanhistorynetwork.com is our new website, a new easy to use website also. And let me pull it up here. Okay, because we have the information right on the home page. And if you just click on home, when we go to it, I'm still updating the website. We have the information here. So I'm teaching this class today. As soon as we finish, it'll be about 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Normally it's on Sundays. Normally do it 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I'm running behind today. So this class right here, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And let me increase the size here on the website, 1865 to 1968. Okay, can we do that? So this is an important piece of history, and this ties into directly to what's going on today also. All right, this tells us what happened after slavery ended, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us right where we are today, so we understand where we need to go from here. All right, now if we look at this, go back to this article here from Time Magazine. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War. So this piece starts out and it deals with, and let me post this link right here for you all also, just a second, so you can register for the class and join us in class today. So I teach this at my online school. In the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago, okay, the January 6th insurrection, in the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence and the Reconstruction era. between the violence we saw on January 6th and the Reconstruction era, which was the period of political revolution directly following the U.S. Civil War. And we know the Civil War is 1861, 1865. The events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction. The events we saw reminded me very much of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials, This was said by Eric Foner, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. He said this in an interview with the New Yorker magazine, which was published a week after the January 6th insurrection. So we saw them looking for Nancy Pelosi. We saw them saying, hang Mike Pence. We saw them trying to get into, breaking into the chambers of the House and the Senate. Okay. If they had gotten some of the members, especially Democratic members of the House and the Senate, they most likely would have done bodily harm to them. This is reminiscent of the Reconstruction era and the political violence during Reconstruction. Now, scholars say studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent history, in recent years, from the brutal murder of George Floyd by police in 2020 to the voter suppression laws enacted after African-American voters played a big role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president in 2020. But despite the timeliness of the era in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they get to college. Okay, well, a lot of them are not going to go to college. Despite the timeliness of this era, in today's climate, the Reconstruction era is directly related to what's taking place and is reminiscent of what's taking place now with the political violence and the voter suppression bills against African Americans, is reminiscent of this Reconstruction era. But many students in American schools will not get a full education on Reconstruction until they get to college. Okay, so read the rest of this here. And these are all things that we deal with in this 10-week online class that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So it's a 10-week online class. I'm teaching another installment today, right after finish this broadcast. So we'll start about 3:30 p.m. We have the link here in the thread of the broadcast. You can register for it. Classes on sale $60, regularly $130. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. Okay, so even if you can't join us in class live, the sessions are archived and recorded. A year from now, 2 years from now, you'll still have access to the full class. You can go back and watch it. They're archived. So the second article here that I want to look at, this is a more recent article, and this came out in May. This came out May 23rd, 2022. How white violence crushed the progressive change formerly enslaved people won during Reconstruction. How white violence crushed the progressive change formerly enslaved people won during Reconstruction. So this is why, this is one of the reasons why in 2016 I was warning people that Donald Trump had to be stopped. Okay, during the 2016 election season, because I'm looking at certain things, and Trump was a throwback to Richard Nixon and George Wallace. And I'm looking at certain things coming, and I'm like, no, we have to stop this. So this picture that you see here, members of the first legislature after the Civil War in South Carolina, 1876. Okay, so South Carolina, at one point, the majority of the members of South Carolina's legislature were African Americans at one point after during Reconstruction. So this, we're only going to look at this article here briefly. This article starts out talking about Charleston, South Carolina radical Republican Solomon George Washington Deal, who's a white man. Solomon George Washington Deal, who's a white man, but he advocated for the rights of African Americans and the sharecroppers and newly freed slaves, things like that. And he offered a solution that would protect sharecroppers and tenant farmers, including formerly enslaved Black people, from being gouged by white landowners. The resolution was tabled when Solomon George Washington Deal, also known as SGW Deal, it was tabled. But then Deal, who was a white man, was allowed to speak, and he said, "I insist on giving the poor man, justice, and all that truly belongs to him. Numbers of them are oppressed. Numbers are without homes, without shelter, and cannot obtain it unless they give more than one half of their physical labor to their landlords for shelter. I am begged to do something for them towards keeping the landlords in check. Now, in taking this strong stand, SGW Deal put his life at risk. Okay, this is a white man in South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is where the Civil War started, April 12, 1861. Okay. And South Carolina was also the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860, about 6 weeks after Abraham Lincoln becomes president-elect, because South Carolina and other southern states thought Lincoln was going to free the slaves. Now, elected to represent Kershaw County, he never got to serve his full term in Columbia, South Carolina. Okay, he never got his chance to serve his full term. On the night of June 4th, 1868, okay, Solomon George Washington Deal was assassinated by assailants who were never found. He was assassinated by assailants who were never found. Though many reported the men belonged to the Ku Klux Klan, SGW Deal's killing fit the pattern of Klan violence against whites who acted in the interests of the poor against the interests of wealthy landowners. Deal's killing fit the pattern of Klan violence against white people. Like, white Republicans were being beaten up and killed. African Americans were being attacked. African American Republicans were being attacked. Members of the state legislatures were being attacked in the South by not just the Klan, but the red shirts and you have the Knights of the White Camellia, things like this. You had other domestic terrorist organizations. The Klan was the most popular one, but the Klan was not the only one. Okay, so during Reconstruction, the Klan acted as a paramilitary arm of the Southern Democratic Party and of white landowners. Okay, during Reconstruction, the Klan acted as a paramilitary arm of the Southern Democratic Party and of white landowners. The Klan's goal was simple: keep the poor, black and white, from encroaching on the economic power of the wealthy, because there was poor white people being killed also, okay, and being attacked, things like this. Now, ultimately, the Klan and their wealthy white backers were victorious, but not before the formerly enslaved and their supporters scored several major victories that were then ripped away through white violence. Several major victories that were then ripped away through white violence. The political violence that we saw on January 6th was a continuation of the political violence that we saw during the Reconstruction era. And that political violence was geared to reverse the gains that African Americans were making, reverse the gains when it came to voting, reverse the gains that it came to us acquiring land, run us out of political office, attack, beat up, or kill African American men who were in elected office, etc. And this was to maintain power, maintain white supremacy in these former Confederate states. Now, during the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877, and this is a period that we deal with in the 10-week online class that I teach on Sundays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. During the Reconstruction era, thousands of formerly enslaved people across the South were voted into office. Okay, so it was about 2,000 African-American men who get voted into political office, local level, state legislature, things like this. And then you're going to have about 20 in Congress, okay? Most of them in the House of Representatives, but you're going to have about 20 in Congress. They controlled politics. These African-American men controlled politics, from local police departments to state legislatures, and in some instances, the governor's mansion itself, okay? Governor Bruce, Blanche K. Bruce, I'm sorry, PBS Pinchback. You're going to have Blanche K. Bruce, who, coming out of Mississippi, is the first African-American U.S. senator. That's in 1870. Now, state legislatures passed tenancy laws to protect sharecroppers and tenant farmers, passed bills making it easier for people to obtain credit, and created state agencies charged with looking out for the poor, So the Reconstruction era was this revolutionary, really period of time where African Americans are making advances, even though we did not get what people will call reparations or restitution. Still, we're going to start acquiring some land during this period of time as well. Okay, we know Special Field Order number 15, which is known as 40 acres and a mule, which we discussed in the class. We know that was reversed. We know that was reversed by President Andrew Johnson, when Johnson becomes president after Lincoln is assassinated. Okay, April of 1865. All right, so let's continue here. So what we see is how Reconstruction ending, and then after Reconstruction, the next period is going to be the Jim Crow era, where we see segregation imposed after these white supremacists take back control of the state legislatures. And we see Tennessee, 1881, pass a law to segregate streetcars, railroad cars, things like this. We're going to see other states do this in their state legislatures. Then in 1889, Florida is going to be the first state to pass have a poll tax, which was a tax that you had to pay maybe $2, something like that, a tax that you had to pay to register to vote. Then we're going to see that's 1889 in Florida, 1890 in Mississippi, We see the Mississippi state legislature. We're going to see the Mississippi Convention of 1890, where they rewrite the state constitution to impose poll taxes and literacy tests. And they did this specifically targeting African American voters and to run us out of the state legislature. Okay. There were Mississippi in 1890 had the majority of the voters were African American men, and we were basically the majority of the population as well, which was a legacy of slavery. There's a good article from the Washington Post that deals with this, and it's called. Let me pull this up here. And it deals with how we are here to exclude the Negro. We are here to exclude the Negro. This article right here from the Washington Post. So the voter suppression bills that we see, approximately 400 being pushed through state legislatures, especially state legislatures controlled by Republicans and have Republican governors in office. That is reminiscent of what happened after Reconstruction ends. And what Mississippi did became known as the Mississippi Plan. Okay, the Mississippi Plan. And what Mississippi did became copied by other southern states. South Carolina, 1895, Louisiana, 1898, Alabama, 1901. You're going to have Georgia and Oklahoma, things like this. North Carolina. Now, Representative Benny Thompson, who's the chair of the January 6th committee, he represents Mississippi. If you watched the hearing on Thursday, and that was Thursday, June 9th. If you watched the hearing on Thursday, in the opening, he referenced Mississippi. He talked about the people, something to the effect of how a lot of the people who are trying to justify the political violence and things like this with some of the same people trying to justify, it's the same mentality of people trying to justify slavery, et cetera, et cetera. He's from Mississippi. He understands this history. Okay. What's taking place right now is reminiscent of what was going on in 1890. All right. So if we look at this here, the Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. This article is from May 1st, 2021 by Ronald G. Schaefer. And it talks about the Mississippi State Convention, okay, in August of 1890. The convention's president was a white county judge named Solomon Saladin Calhoun. And he put the voting issue bluntly. He talked about why they were there, what they were going to accomplish. He said, let's tell the truth if it burst the bottom of the universe. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. This is why they rewrote the Mississippi State Constitution, targeting African-American men who were voting. To suppress our vote and to run us out of political office in Mississippi, so they can fully take back control of, political power in Mississippi. Okay, now delegates eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state with a black majority. Exactly. This is what I've been screaming about to some of these stupid ass Negroes that sit up talking about not voting. You have absolutely no understanding of history, because now we break all this stuff down in the class. I'm gonna keep this short because I have to teach this class today. And we'll talk about this some tonight on my radio show. I'm on live Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. I'm a radio talk show host here in Detroit. If you watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, you see me every Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered, because I do political commentary, political analysis, and we talk about current events, things like that. I'm also a historian. So I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on this past Friday. All right. What we saw taking place with these voter suppression bills that's going on right now, as well as the attack on critical race theory, I would argue this is worse. In some ways, it's worse than Reconstruction because it's being fueled by Fox News. You ain't have television back then. It's being fueled by Fox News. It's being funded by right-wing groups like Heritage Action, which is a sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. And it was Heritage Action, and I'm just going to show you this here quickly because we have to understand how all this is tied together and all this is connected to history. Okay, so Mother Jones, motherjones.com had this story that we've talked about here. We talked about here on the African History Network show. We've talked about it numerous times, but we have to understand how all this is connected. Okay, so if we look at this here, and I'm gonna post a link. How do you all like this type of information? Okay, who still needs to register for this 10-week online course that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968? Okay. Okay, now somebody said Democratic talking points. No, these are not Democratic talking points. See, you don't understand history. First thing you should do is go study the Compromise of 1877 and how Rutherford B. Hayes became president. Number one. Number two, second thing you need to do, Lamar Wheel, is go study the what's known as the Lily White Movement of 1928, because it's clear you haven't studied the history. It's absolutely clear you haven't studied the history. All right, Motivation Garden. Okay, yeah, we got your registration. Thank you, Motivation Garden. Now let's look at this right here. See, when people talk about Democratic talking points, you show that you don't even understand what's going on right now. Let's look at this article right here. This is from motherjones.com. This exposes Heritage Action Group, which is a sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is a right-wing group. You want to talk about Democratic talking points? Why don't you talk about the Heritage Foundation and Heritage Action, which is their sister organization? The reason why you don't talk about it is because you don't know about it. In a private meeting last month, now this article is from May 13th, 2021. In a private meeting last month with big money donors, the head of a top conservative group boasted that her outfit, not what she was wearing, but her organization that she represents, had crafted the new voter suppression law in Georgia. Okay. And was doing the same with similar bills for Republican state legislators across the country. Quote, in some cases, we actually draft them for them, she said. They're talking about Jessica Anderson, who's the who's the CEO, executive director of Heritage Action, which is the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. If you don't know about the Heritage Foundation, it's probably because you don't study history, because the Heritage Foundation was created by Paul Weyrich in 1973. And the Heritage Foundation is one of these one of these right-wing organizations that pushes these conservative bills that are doing us harm. Okay. Now, the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society were two of the right-wing organizations who provided Donald Trump with a list of prospective federal judges that Donald Trump chose from to nominate to be on the federal bench. This is what happens when you come here and have no clue what you're talking about. The research, the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, because there were 103 vacancies on the federal bench when Donald Trump became president, because when Republicans won the U.S. Senate in the 2014 midterm elections, Mitch McConnell and Republicans blocked federal bench nominations that President Obama made. One of the nominations that was blocked was for Myra Selby, who was a federal judge out of the Chicago area, It's African-American woman. She was nominated to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals by President Obama, Myra Selby. Okay. President Obama also nominated a woman named Ketanji Brown Jackson as well. And that's how Ketanji Brown Jackson got on the federal bench, is because President Obama nominated her. But if you look at this right here, this article, we talked about this on the show because we deal with real substance on the show. I love it when people come here with talking points that they don't understand. Okay. Just come here with talking points that they don't understand. Just simple Simon ass nonsense. And then you get exposed and show you have no clue what you're talking about. This right here. Okay. Never forget, Myra Selby is the Black woman judge whose court seat was stolen for Amy Coney Barrett. I don't have time to get deep into this. Good article by Bruce C.T. Wright, October 13th, 2020, for newsone.com, because I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. I've been doing radio 12 years, studying history for 30 years. But in a nutshell, what happened was Myra Selby was blocked. Her nomination to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeal was blocked, and she was not given a hearing. Okay, now this is Reese Colbert. Reese and I were both on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Reese founded Black Women's View, so check out Reese Colbert. This is Myra Selby, Judge Myra Selby right here, African-American woman nominated by President Barack Obama to the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. All right. The Seventh Circuit is now the only all-white federal appellate court in the country. So what happened was, back in 2016, President Obama described Myra Selby, both the first Black person to serve on the Indiana Supreme Court and the first woman appointed to the state's highest legal panel. Let me see if we increase the size. Okay. Now, in part as displaying, quote, exceptional dedication to the legal profession, end quote, and vowed that she and another judge he nominated, President Obama nominated, would be diligent, judicious, and esteemed additions to the bench. But her nomination, check this out, her nomination expired after a year elapsed, strategically allowing Donald Trump to bring forth his own set of judicial nominations. They did not give Myra Selby a hearing. Mitch McConnell, who controlled the Senate, the Senate majority leader, this is why voting is so extremely important. The Senate majority leader controls which bills come to the Senate floor for debate. The Senate majority leader controls which bills get voted on, but also the Senate majority leader also controls hearings for federal judges, which are lifetime appointments, and hearings for U.S. Supreme Court justices. So the same thing that Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the Senate did to Merrick Garland in 2016, when he was nominated by President Barack Obama as the Supreme Court nomination, they did not give Merrick Garland a hearing. After a year, the nomination expired. They did the same thing to this African-American woman, Judge Myra Selby. They did the same exact thing to her. Okay. But here it gets even deeper. When Trump became president, the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, who did Republicans put in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals? Amy Coney Barrett. Amy Coney Barrett became judge in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, which then put her on the trajectory to be on the U.S. Supreme Court. This is what happens when you listen to dumbasses who tell you don't vote, have absolutely no clue what they're talking about, never read the U.S. Constitution, don't understand the duties of the Senate, don't understand that the president nominates federal judges, but it's the Senate that confirms them. And what Republicans did by taking back control of the Senate in 2014, they blocked over 100 of President Obama's federal bench nominations. So then when Trump became president, by way of the Electoral College that most of us don't understand because we haven't read the U.S. Constitution, when Trump became president, there were 103 vacancies on the federal bench for Trump to fill. And who was sending him a list? Who was sending him a list of ultra conservative, very young, mostly white judges to fill that bench? The Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. And then the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation are the very same ones who are crafting boilerplate voter suppression bills like the one in Georgia. They're the ones that crafted the Senate Bill 202. They're the ones that crafted that for Georgia, while you have idiots talking about Democratic talking points because you don't study none of this. Go run that on somebody that doesn't read. Jessica Anderson, who is the executive director of the Heritage Action, said in some cases we actually draft them for them. They actually draft these bills for Republicans in these state legislatures. She said, or we have a sentinel on our behalf give them the model legislation so it has that grassroots from the bottom up type of vibe. The Georgia law had 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended. The Georgia law, Senate Bill 202, had 8 key provisions that Heritage recommended. Jessica Anderson, the executive director of Heritage Action for America, a sister organization of the Heritage Foundation, told the foundation's donors at an April 22nd gathering in Tucson, Arizona, in a recording obtained by Watchdog Group, documented and shared with Mother Jones. Those 8 provisions included policies severely restricting mail drop ballots, preventing election officials from sending absentee ballot request forms to voters, making it easier for partisan workers to monitor the polls, preventing the collection of mail ballots, and restricting the ability of counties to accept donations from nonprofit groups seeking to aid in election administration. This is what Heritage Action put in Senate Bill 202, and they're trying to suppress the African American vote while you got people who have no clue what they're talking about Democratic talking points, and they can't explain 1/10 of this stuff to you. All of these recommendations came straight from Heritage Action for America's list of best practices drafted in February. With Heritage's help, Jessica Anderson, executive director, said Georgia became the example for the rest of the country. Well, this is reminiscent to Mississippi in 1890. Reminiscent of Mississippi in 1890, because what Mississippi did at the Mississippi Convention in 1890 became known as the Mississippi Plan. And what they did, imposing poll taxes and literacy tests, became copied by the other southern states. We're being outmaneuvered on the political chessboard. Don't understand history and don't understand law, don't understand politics. This is why we have to be educated on this, so we understand how to fight back. This is why they're coming for this. I'm looking at what's taking place. This is the Reconstruction Era all over again. But this time we have the benefit of hindsight. We ain't had the benefit of hindsight 1865, 1877. Hiram Rhodes Revels out of Mississippi, first African-American U.S. Senator. Okay, Hiram Rhodes Revels. And he was also the first African-American to serve in either the U.S. Congress, the U.S. House of Representatives, or the Senate. Okay. Just 2 decades earlier, so he took office in 1870. All right. Just 2 decades earlier, the Mississippi State Legislature had made history by electing Hiram Rhodes Revels to the U.S. Senate. He was the first African-American member to serve in either house of Congress, but that moment of racial progress quickly vanished. Okay, now here's a picture here of Hiram Rhodes Revels. Okay, 1870. Hiram Rhodes Revels, an African-American preacher and educator, was elected to the U.S. Senate from Mississippi to become the first Black member of Congress. After Rutherford B. Hayes removed all federal troops, the remaining federal troops, he removed them out of former Confederate states, the remaining federal troops who were there protecting the rights to a certain extent of African Americans. Okay. After Rutherford B. Hayes removed all federal troops from southern states in 1877, white Democrats supported who had supported slavery, largely, especially those in the South. White Democrats who had supported slavery and the Confederacy began regaining control of the states from black and white Republicans. Okay, this is a crucial period of history. All right, so check that out from the Washington Post. Now, I'm going to wrap this up because I have to teach this class. Let's go back to this one here. Time.com, Time Magazine, May 31st, 2022. How white violence crushed the progressive change formerly enslaved people won during Reconstruction. Okay, so let's go back to this here. This is for May 23rd. May 23rd, 2022. Let's go back to this here. Okay, so we're talking about S.G.W. Deal, who's a member of the South Carolina State Legislature. And he was killed. He advocated on behalf of African Americans. He was a white man who advocated on behalf of African Americans and the poor. He was killed. It's believed by the Ku Klux Klan nobody was ever brought to justice for his murder. Okay, so during Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, thousands of formerly enslaved people across the South were voted into office. They controlled politics from local police departments to state legislatures, and in some cases, the governor's mansion. State legislatures passed tenancy laws to protect sharecroppers. And let me try to increase the size of this here also. Okay, they passed tenancy laws to protect sharecroppers, and tenant farmers passed bills making it easier for poor people to obtain credit, and created state agencies charged with looking out for the poor. Reconstruction justices and juries, many of them black, delivered verdicts in favor of poor farmers, black and white, against wealthy landowners. And so when we had this political violence during Reconstruction, it's to reverse all of this and totally take back control and suppress the African American vote. And because poll taxes were instituted, then that knocked a lot of us off the voter rolls. So then we couldn't vote to keep the African Americans in elected office, and they get knocked out. Across the South, black men such as Blanche K. Bruce, a U.S. senator from Mississippi, and James T. Rapier, a U.S. representative from Alabama, owned and operated large plantations of thousands of acres or more. Now, at the same time, let me see here. Where I leave off. Okay, so I'm looking at my notes. At the same time, state legislatures have been charged by newly approved state constitutions to meet more of the public need in education and care of the poor in hospitals and mental health facilities. A new tax structure followed this new set of public priorities, combined with huge state deficits incurred during the Civil War and a collapse in the credit market for the South. Now, Southern states moved aggressively to raise property taxes, in some cases by a factor of 10, when compared to the pre-war period. Okay, black African-American run state legislatures believed this might be a market-driven solution for land distribution, Owners of large plantations and huge tracts of land would either be forced to sell or have their land confiscated for failure to pay taxes. Now, the land then could be redistributed to landless, formerly enslaved, and to poor white people. Okay. Now, this rarely happened, however. While land redistribution by taxation rarely happened, the period saw the country embarking on a road toward wide-scale democracy and racial justice, wide-scale democracy and racial justice. But the period ultimately descended into violence as white Americans allowed their fear of the power of the formerly enslaved to trump their embrace of equality and fairness. This is the same thing going on right now. There's a fear by some white people, not all white people. There's a fear of some white people of the browning of America. There's a fear by some white people of African Americans becoming more politically powerful. And this is why you see these voter suppression bills. This is why you saw the January 6th insurrection. Okay, this is why you saw that take place. The domestic terrorists that you saw January 6th trying to overthrow the government are descendants of the domestic terrorists that we saw attacking political officials and overthrowing Reconstruction in 1865 to 1877. This is the same thing. This is what we're dealing with. Except they didn't storm the U.S. Capitol building during Reconstruction. All right, but they did everything else to end that period and reverse the gains that we were making. Okay. Increased taxation sent plantation owners up in arms and gave them a way to shift the focus of their attack from race to taxes. It gave the plantation owners a chance to shift their focus from race to taxes, even though race was very much beneath the taxation issue. Such anger on the part of wealthy whites contributed to the rise of violent groups supported by them, such as the Ku Klux Klan, and ultimately to an organized, successful political effort to undo Reconstruction through violence. Well, you had two domestic terrorist organizations, the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, who are working on behalf of Donald Trump January 6th to overthrow the government and invalidate the votes of African Americans and Latinos and Asian Americans and others. The era of Jim Crow began. Lynchings became commonplace entertainment for whites. Voting rights came under attack as Black voters were forced at gunpoint to vote for racist white Democrats, or they were threatened with violence and told to stay away from the voting polls. You can even go to the Ocoee massacre in Florida in 1920 and see that. Okay, but we look at we'll in the class we'll look at the Clinton, Mississippi riot of 1875, Vicksburg massacre 1874, Opelousas massacre 1868. We'll go through and look at some of these massacres that were because of political violence. Armed gangs patrolled polling stations to prevent African Americans from voting. Groups like the White League, we're going to see the White League heavy in Mississippi. Groups like the White League and the Red Shirts joined the Ku Klux Klan. On December 12, 1874, this is one of them we talk about in class, the Vicksburg massacre of 1874, because there was an African American sheriff named Peter Crosby who was forced out of office, duly elected, former slave, forced out of office by white domestic terrorists. Okay, so the White League and the Red Shirts joined the Klan. December 12, 1874, the white president of the Board of Supervisors in Vicksburg, Mississippi, received a telegram from white mercenaries in Trinity, Texas, offering their services to kill out your Negroes, Northern newspapers also stepped into the fray, whipping up fears of quote unquote Africanization, whipping up fears of quote unquote Africanization. What happened here? Okay, let me see, where are we? Right here. Okay, whipping up fears of Africanization, the code word used to describe the widespread successful, where is it right here? Africanization. The code word used to describe the widespread successful exercise of political power by the formerly enslaved. Okay, so read the rest of this here. Read the rest of this here, this article. These are some of the things that we deal within the 10-week online class that I teach. Once again, name of this article, How White Violence Crushed the Progressive Change Formerly Enslaved People Won During Reconstruction. So this is a 10-week online class that I teach on Sundays. Normally it's 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I'm running behind today. So I'm about to teach this class now. Name of this class is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. We have the information also at our new website, which is theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. So we have a new, easy to use website. The other one is still up, africanhistorynetwork.com, but I'm switching everything over to the new website. So we have the information here, and you scroll down, click right there, register here. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you can still watch it. On Saturdays, I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So that class is on sale, $60, regularly $130 also. We have a course bundle pack. If you've already registered for this class, you can upgrade. We'll upgrade you to the course bundle pack. Just email me. You get both classes for $100, okay, with the course bundle pack. And then there's some free content that you get also with the course bundle pack. All right. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com and you'll get a 50% discount. Email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. Also, if you'd like to stop for information, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. All right. And then my radio show will be on Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We broadcast right here on Facebook, the African History Network on Facebook, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Then also on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. So you can listen. You download the iHeartRadio app. Here's me in the studio. You can download the iHeartRadio app. Search for 9:10 a.m. WFDF. You can listen live, but also search for the African History Network show on the iHeartRadio app. And they have my audio podcast there on my shows, about 300 of them. They have something like that. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win Wakanda forever, and we'll see you in class.